Do you know what months are the busiest on the labor unit? These ones, the end of summer, early fall, before the holidays months. I'm not going to lie, working on the OB unit in these months was wild, just as much as it was so much fun. But what I saw over and over again was that these busier seasons often meant your providers had less time. Less time to teach you, less time to educate you about pros and cons, and often less time to give you to make your own decisions. I want to make sure that this doesn't happen to you, and it won't once you join me inside of the Your Body, Your Birth class. An online course created by me, a mama, former labor and mom-baby nurse, and CLC. The video and audio inside this class will take you from overwhelmed, worried, and unsure to prepared, informed, and excited, and ready to chase the birth you want, regardless of how busy your provider or that OB unit might be. To get started right now and save 25% for being a podcast listener, head over to thelabormama.com/birth and use the code MAMA25 to join me for as little as $65 today. The link and your coupon code are in the show notes.
Motherhood is all-consuming.
Having babies, nursing, feeling the fear of loving someone that much.
And there's this baby on your chest and boom, your entire life has changed.
It's a privilege of being your child's safest space and watching your heart walk around outside of your body.
The truth is, I can be having the best time being a mum 1 minute, and then the next I'm questioning all my life choices.
I'm Lo Mansfield, your host of the Lo and Behold podcast. Mama of 4 littles, former labor and postpartum RN, CLC, and your new best friend in the messy middle space of all the choices you are making in pregnancy, birth, and motherhood. If there is one thing I know after years of delivering babies at the bedside and then having and now raising those 4 of my own, it is that there is no such thing as a best way to do any of this. And we're leaning into that truth here. With a mix of real life and what the textbook says, expert insights, and practical applications, each week we're making our way towards stories that we participate in, stories that we are honest about, and stories that are ours. This is the Lo and Behold podcast. All right, friend, I have got a birth story for you in this episode, and it's one that, as always, I'm so excited to share with you. Priscilla was a student of mine in Your Body, Your Birth, and so I've gotten to know her pretty well, virtually at least, right? So lots of messages back and forth in the last weeks of Priscilla's pregnancy. I got lots of messages postpartum too, as she was processing the birth and recovering, and you'll kind of hear some of that while we talk. But ultimately, I'm excited to share Priscilla's story because it is one that is not perfect. And I think that's a good thing for us, right? It is so good for us to hear the full spectrum of birth stories and remember that birth is unpredictable and we don't always know where it's going to go or what it's going to do. But what we can do is show up kind of armed with all the info and knowledge to navigate wherever it goes and whatever kinds of twists and turns that it does take. Priscilla's story is just a great example of that reality. Hey, Priscilla, thank you so much for being here with me today, first of all. I introduced you like a tiny bit before we got started, but why don't you give us a more kind of personal, fuller introduction of who you are?
Sure, sounds good. Well, and first of all, let me say just thank you so much. It's such a privilege and an honor to get to chat with you. My name is Priscilla. I live in Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada with my husband and our 2 daughters. My second is 8 weeks old today, and we have lived here for we've lived in Canada all our lives, and we both work from home in the business tech sector, but I'm currently on maternity leave, and excited to be here to tell a bit of my story and how I came in contact with Lo and the Labor Mama platform and how it's been such an incredible resource for me in my journey of birth and motherhood.
I feel like I had 2 things in there. One, we could have a separate episode on how 2 parents work from home with 2 little kids in the house, because we are working through that in our house all the time and how to navigate that. And then I know you mentioned we're going to kind of, I think, focus in on your most recent birth story since you're fresh. But as we get into it, I'd love to hear kind of whatever you want to share about the first one and what brought you to the place of where you're at with the second one and wanting things to be different or the same or whatever. So why don't we start there? You could either jump right into pregnancy with number 2 and just include kind of that first birth, or you can give us a little recap of first experience and then get into number 2. Just go for it.
Yeah. For sure. I will definitely start with my first because I think it's helpful context for kind of where I landed with my second. And that's when I first kind of came across your platform. However, Instagram kind of floated your profile my way. That's when I first connected with you and was just such an incredible resource through my first pregnancy. So I should have mentioned my husband and I will be married 10 years this coming October, which is fun.
Congrats.
Thanks. And yeah, so we got pregnant with my first in 2022. And going into pregnancy, like, I don't think I had huge aspirations or goals for my pregnancy necessarily. And I had, gratefully, both my pregnancies have been really smooth. I've felt pretty good throughout. So I'm one of those people that like enjoys being pregnant for the most part. Which I'm very grateful for. And then somewhere towards kind of in my third trimester, I would say I picked up Ina May's Guide to Childbirth. A friend had recommended it. And I think between that and kind of your platform, I started going down this path of like, man, I want to see what my body is capable of. I'd love to try an unmedicated birth and see how that goes. And just felt kind of like I was starting to get excited about that idea. And then also I think I reflect back on both my mom and my mother-in-law's experiences. They both had 3 kids. And at the time, like epidurals, my mom would explain it like they weren't allowed to have them, or they were hard to get. Like the doctors were very much like, you can do this. And so I often reflected on their experiences. I was like, both of them had 3 kids without an epidural. So like, if they did it, I can do it. Why not?
Right.
So that was kind of my mindset. Then at my 35-week appointment, I went in for a checkup and I knew my baby wasn't head down because I could feel her head very predominantly up kind of by my ribs. But I was like, oh, it's no big deal. Like, I've still got 5 weeks. And I distinctly remember my midwife, feeling around, checking things. She's like, well, this is what we call a variation of normal. And I was like, oh, like, what's
no one
wrong?
wants to hear those words, right?
Yeah. And so she starts to tell me that my baby is like pretty settled in to my pelvis within their bum is in my pelvis. And I remember kind of being like, kind of as the reality of her news set in, it was like, okay, so your baby is breech. And she was like, I don't think they're going to move. But and I remember feeling pretty emotional about that and disappointed. Like, what? Yeah. Like, I've been doing all this kind of prep and planning, which was minimal, to be fair, but like getting excited about it. And then, of course, I went into full on type A, like, I'm going to do everything under the sun to try and get this baby to move. So I did everything from like Chinese medicine, moxibustion, which we always laugh about. My husband's like,
I'd probably try it too. Yep.
Burning coals over my toes, to an ECV. I tried an ECV around somewhere between the 37 and 38 week mark, which was intense for sure. It was not successful. And yeah, she just was bound and determined to come out with her bum instead of her head. And I did have some conversations with my team about, a potential vaginal breech delivery, knowing that it was not likely to be successful as a first time birthing mom. And I kind of, where I had landed with it was like, if all the stars align and the right OB is on, because I was in a hospital where there were certain OBs who would consider doing that. Great. And I went into labor spontaneously before my scheduled C-section, then I would try it. None of that ended up happening. My C-section was scheduled the day before she was due.
Okay, I'm just going to clarify that I heard that right. So you were at a hospital with providers willing to do a vaginal breech birth if you went into labor spontaneously. Did I hear that right?
Not all of them, but there were a couple, yes.
So it would
not
have to be like a no. That's really interesting. I mean, it feels like it's just almost an absolute no everywhere in the United States.
Yeah. So where I gave birth, it's BC Women's Hospital.
Right.
And so they're, kind of cream of the crop in terms of care in our province, certainly. And yeah, it wasn't everyone, but it was certain providers. So it was like really, I would have to things would really have to line up if it was going to happen.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
It didn't. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, it didn't. So anyway.
So yeah, so went into the hospital the day before I was due. We didn't know the gender. It was really fun. And it's just a weird experience. You walk in and you're like, tra la la la, like, gonna have a baby. Had no signs of labor. I maybe had one or two times where I was like, oh, was that a contraction? But really minimal. Had my C-section, like it honestly went really smooth. It was really special. Had my music playing, my husband got to announce the gender. I got to hold her right away. She came out really healthy. Like there were no concerns. We had lots of skin to skin time. It was like, I look back on it and it was really special. And I say that all because I think I'm unique in the sense that like, it wasn't a traumatic birth experience that led me to this place of being really intentional about my birth. Right or wrong, it's just, it is what it is. And I feel really fortunate in that regard, actually. So yeah, but right away, like I knew, I was literally like in the hospital the next day being like, talking to my husband about like the next one. Like I was so excited. I was just like high on the endorphins and so excited. Yeah. And so then I just knew right away, like that for my second, I would want to try for a VBAC and just kind of start all over again and be like, we're going to do this. Like the chance of me having a breach again is like so minimal. And so they had done, I forget what it was called, but some sort of scope examination of my uterus to check and see if there was any like particular reason why she was breached, and there wasn't.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's kind of like part one of my story, I would say. So there's like three parts. So part two would be like the pregnancy, number 2 pregnancy, and kind of leading up to labor and delivery. Once again, really like positive pregnancy. Things went really well. Of course, as I was approaching those like last few weeks, I was like very keen to get in and make sure she was head down and all these things. And she was, I say she, surprise, it was a girl, but didn't know. Again, we kept the gender surprise, which is always, we really like, it was fun. And yeah, in that pregnancy, I kind of went into it with I would say 4 goals as I like thought about my birth plan. So one, I knew that my likelihood of a successful VBAC would be strongly influenced by going into spontaneous labor. So that was like my first goal. But my second goal was to like have that VBAC. And then thirdly, I was hoping to do it without an epidural. And fourth, hoping to do it without kind of any medicine. And having those, I would say like prioritized goals was helpful for me so that I didn't walk away from the pregnancy from the delivery feeling like pass fail, but it's like, here's the goals. And in the ideal version, I would hit all 4 and then we'll try and tackle them kind of in priority order.
Yep.
And in order to kind of do that, I really did lean into like the hypnobirthing world through a few different books that I had read. I didn't take a course or anything, but just different books. And then I listened and watched a ton of birth stories. Like I think my husband was like, oh my word, like what is wrong with you?
Mine's the same.
Coming out to the living room, seeing me like crying on the couch.
Right, exactly.
Delivery. But I just love it. It was so exciting and inspiring to see a huge variation. And I made sure to really prioritize like seeing, those induction births, seeing home births, hospital births, kind of like everything in between, to know it's like, it's all good and it's all beautiful and it can go 100 different ways. Was kind of the mindset that I had. So yeah, then I think that the other thing I would say about it is that I was unique in the sense that like, so I'm this second pregnancy, but really like a first time laborer. So as I was like talking to my friends, they're like, oh yeah, that's so weird. Like you never went into labor with your first. So that was like kind of, just I would say a unique experience as well. So then kind of leading up to my due date, which was May 6th, I wasn't really experiencing any signs of labor, which tracked because with my first, like I said, delivered, like she was born via cesarean like the day before she was due, and I also didn't have any signs of labor, so I wasn't really expecting to go into labor early. And I was trying all of the things to like get things going around that point, everything from like acupuncture to dates, tea,
all the things,
like all of the above. It's the Miles circuit, everything. I had my first attempted stretch and sweep at 39 and 2. I'd finished work. I kind of like a week before I was due. So I was like, sure, let's do it. Let's get things going. They tried. My cervix was really far back, so nothing really happened from that. We tried again at 40 plus 2, so 2 days past my due date.
Mhm.
Same thing, like wasn't really successful. I think maybe it had moved a bit closer, but still really firm. And I was still feeling really good. Like I was feeling great. People were like, "Oh my gosh, are you like so ready to have this baby out?" And I was like yes, but also I'm okay. Like I'm
Mhm.
feeling healthy. I don't feel massively uncomfortable. So that was definitely in my favor. And then right around like the 41 week mark is when I would say I started to experience a lot of like pressure from my team. And maybe I'll just pause to say like I was with a midwife and kind of like a holistic model of care. So they also had OBs on their team, and like the whole postpartum was all in one office is how it works.
Mhm.
And my plan was to deliver at the hospital as well. But yeah, right around 41 weeks, conversations started happening about like, okay, we should probably get an induction scheduled. And I knew that, like I was preparing for that. I knew that was going to
It's
happen.
coming.
And I had said like, it kind of from the get-go, like as long as I'm healthy and baby's healthy, like I don't want to have an induction because I want to have a successful VBAC. And I know that's it's not impossible, but it's not going to help the situation.
Right.
But yeah, really started to feel that pressure. And it was tough, like mentally, it was quite tough. Even though I was physically feeling well, it was hard to stay the course, stay positive. But I really leaned into my support for my doula. I had hired a doula to work with. And then again, like started listening to seeking out more stories of people who went quite a ways past their due date, like into the 42-week territory, to just be like encouraged that like I can do this. My body was made to do this. I really, leaned into that idea of like and would say to myself, like, I have a good body. My body is good. Like I would repeat that to myself all the time, because you start having these questions when you go significantly past your due date of like, is this going to happen? What's wrong with me? And so those were the things I really, really leaned into, and voices like yours, right? And others out there who are doing such like meaningful, encouraging work, when your circle that you have, maybe I don't have of the, 10 or so people who are close to me who have these birth stories, nothing looks like mine. So I need to kind of broaden my horizon to say, well, there are other people out there who've experienced this. So yeah, going back to the story, it was 41 and 2. So I was at this point 9 days overdue, where I went in for another appointment. They really wanted me to schedule an induction. I said, fine, like we can schedule one for 42 weeks, just to kind of placate the team. But I knew in my head and my heart that like, unless there were signs of concern, I probably would push it out. And so at 41 weeks is when I started going in for that additional monitoring, the non-stress test, the ultrasound. And I did that twice. I forget the second time. It was 41 weeks and then maybe 3 or 4 days later. And baby was looking good, healthy. They weren't concerned about fluid levels. So I was like, okay, well then let's just stay the course. Thankfully at 41 and 2, I think I had another search and sweep at 41. So in the end, I had like 5 attempted ones. That's a lot of hands.
It's a lot.
In where.
It is.
But at that point, at 41 and 2, I finally had like a successful one where I was 2 centimeters. They were able to get in there, do a sweep. And that was like such a sigh of relief. I was like, okay, something is happening. Like,
yeah.
My body is moving in the right direction. So yeah, that was a Thursday. They wanted me to come in the next day to do another one, which I thought was curious, because normally I was under the impression you kind of wait a couple of days. But I think because we were getting so close to that, like 10 days overdue, they're like, let's just do whatever we can to help you. So I went in again, went to acupuncture. And then kind of that weekend, I had like some cramping, but nothing really major. It was Sunday, which was now kind of 2 days before that 42-week mark. That was going to be the Tuesday that that whole weekend, actually, I was like, was feeling a lot of pressure after conversations with my team, because then I got this phone call from the OB on my team who said like, actually there's certain OBs, I've just learned there's certain OBs at the hospital who won't induce a TOLAC or a VBAC because of the increased risk of uterine scar rupture. And so I really think, she looked at the schedule and she's like, I really think you should schedule your induction for Sunday, because that person will do it, but Monday, Tuesday, they won't. And that was such a frustrating, confusing conversation, because I was like, A, I don't want to have an induction. B, now I feel even more pressure than I already
Right.
do to like go into labor before this happens. So I think I got a call on the weekend on, I can't remember if it was Friday or Saturday. They're like, okay, so, and I didn't agree to, like, my induction was scheduled for 42 weeks. I didn't agree to move it, but I was like, thanks for letting me know. I do believe she like had the best intentions at heart, but I was just like, okay, we'll just leave it as it is. But then I got a call from the hospital being like, so we see that you're scheduled to come in for an induction on Sunday. And I was like,
I am?
no, I'm not.
Yeah.
Like, thanks, but no thanks. And that was like so annoying to me. I was like, why did they do that? Like, but anyways, I was like, thanks, but I'm not coming in. And actually, like, just so you know, I had a stretch and sweep yesterday. I'm 2 centimeters dilated. So I think things are going to happen. And I had then a conversation. One of my midwives actually called me to just check in. She's like, hey, I saw maybe you were coming in, but sounds like not. Like, really supportive. Whatever you want to do, like, I support you. Sounds like you've got a plan. And that was so encouraging. And so then I just kind of touched base and was like, yeah, it feels like things might be happening. But yeah, it was just such an intense couple days of just a lot of emotion. And then like waking up in the mornings feeling like so disappointed that I'm
Right.
like,
It's the
here,
worst
I'm still
feeling.
here. I have not gone into labor.
Nothing happened. Yep. It does feel like that.
But at the same time, like, tried my best to like soak up time with like my husband who was off work and my daughter, knowing like there was only a few more days left of just a family of 3. So anyways, part 3, like, spoiler alert, I actually went into labor, which was so exciting. So it was Sunday. I had gone and got acupuncture, and that was the first time during that acupuncture session that I felt like I had 2 contractions, because they were really mild, but like they had that like wave like sensation where they kind of grew and then peaked and came down. And I was like, oh, like, maybe this is it. Hoping something would happen that afternoon. Nothing really did. I was so tired that evening. I went to bed at like 9 and just like felt so drained. And then I don't think I really slept, but woke up around 1 a.m. to what I was like, okay, I think this is it. I think something's happening. So this was, day before 42 weeks.
Uh-huh.
1 a.m., I'm like laying in bed, trying to just chill, relax. But I was also so excited after all of this intense emotion. I was like, it's finally happening. So I think I laid in bed for about an hour. Then I went to the washroom to just like chill out in there. I think that's at that point I started like timing just to see like, was there any kind of consistency or rhythm to them. And they were, I think, about somewhere between like 8 to 10 minutes apart and between 45 to a minute. So I knew, I was like, okay, this is like early labor, but something's happening. Texted my doula, let her know what was happening. And then somewhere in there too, like I called my mom. She lives about an hour away. She was going to come take care of my oldest. So called her in the middle of the night. And, she was like waiting, bags packed, had been for like weeks. She's like, I'm there. Yeah, exactly. Which is great. And just kind of brought me peace of mind knowing she was there in case things were to ramp up quickly, given that there was a bit of a distance between us. So she came, told her the story. And that was the point where I think I woke my husband up too. And I was like, hey, just called mom, like things are happening, but I'm going to try and go back to bed. Actually, I think I somewhere in there like did my hair because I was like,
you did. Yeah.
Oh, like what if things happen super fast? Like my hair's going to be done. Which is hilarious. And then I tried to go back to bed. And I think I did for a little bit. I think I woke up around like 8 a.m. to like start getting ready, have some breakfast. And and my goal was to I wanted to stay at home as long as I could and really kind of embrace that comfort of home before going to the hospital. It was like, I did not want to go to the hospital and be turned away. Like I was like, I'm not going to be that first time laborer who goes in.
Which is totally okay if you are. I just have to say that. But I always feel that way too. But it's okay if it happens.
And you don't know. You have no idea.
No,
it's like
you
the first time. You have no idea. But yeah, so I really kind of leaned into, as I was laboring at home, just a lot of the things that, you teach that kind of are in the hypnobirthing world in terms of like breath work was a huge, like that's kind of the be all end all. And then listening to like positive birth affirmations. I had like the Christian hypnobirthing app that I was listening to. I had a birth ball I was sitting on. And so I kind of like just went around our small apartment on my birth ball, laying in bed a little bit, but it got really intense when I laid down. So I didn't really like laying down. And yeah, I'm just kind of walking around. My mom took my daughter to the park for like 3 hours, which was such a gift to just have them kind of out of the house. And then I could just kind of be with my husband. I didn't like really need or want a lot from him besides like his presence. Like I was mostly kind of on my own, doing my own thing. We tried every once in a while, like the counter pressure as things got more intense, but I never really, I don't know if we didn't have it figured out right, but I just didn't love it. I was like, no, thanks, just leave me.
Yeah.
But my goal was to like leave a lot of like the tools I had in my pocket in terms of like TENS machine, aromatherapy, even like hydrotherapy, and like being in the tub for the hospital. I was like, I want to save that to the end and do as much as I can on my own. But anyways, it was around like noon, I think, so just about 12 hours in, where my doula, we had been texting throughout, but she checked in again. She's like, how are things going? And at that point, my contractions were about every 5 minutes, somewhere around 5 minutes apart. And my goal was to go in at 3-1-1. So like 3 minutes apart, 1 minute in duration for an hour. That was when I was like going to go in the hospital. We were about, give or take, 25 to 45 minutes to the hospital, depending on traffic. And so that was what I was aiming for. And I will also say, like, throughout the time, I didn't do a ton of timing. I was more just trying to kind of like be in my body and just kind of feel what was going on. But anyways, she checked in. It's like, how are things going? I gave her the update I just gave you. And she's like, why don't you, she's like, are you eating? Or are you resting? I was like, eating, yes. Like I'd been able to eat, drinking lots of water. But I was like, I can't, like, resting, like, not really. Like, I told her, I was like, when I lay down, like, I get really, like, it gets really intense. And so she suggested, she's like, why don't you have a bath, have a 20 to 30-minute bath, then try and lay down and have a sleep, and then go for a walk to, like, get things going again. And I was like, oh, like, are you sure your bath's a good idea? Like, is it too soon? Because I had heard sometimes if you go into the tub, it can slow things down. And she was like, no, like, that's kind of what we want. So you can relax, get some rest, recover, and then get things going again. And when she was like telling me all of this through text, I was just like, oh my gosh, it all sounds just exhausting. And I think that was like an indication that I was probably like well into active labor. But I was like, okay, like, we'll try it. So I get into the tub. Things did not slow down. Like, if anything, that's the point where I feel like things really started to ramp up and to intensify. Just in terms of my contractions, I like needed my husband there with me, like just holding my hand as I experienced kind of the intensity of them. And so so I was like ready to get out of the tub, and I said, like, okay, I'll go lay down for a little bit, but I think we need to start timing them again and see if like we're ready to go into the hospital. So I kind of made it like the 10 to 12 feet between my bed, the bathtub to my bed, and had like 2 or 3 contractions. I laid down for like 2 or 3, and I was like, we do not have time to time these. Like, we need to go to the hospital. Yeah. Like I just knew that it was time. So then it was about a half an hour of us trying to like gather up her stuff, me trying to get dressed, which felt like a big ordeal and exhausting. And then I distinctly remember I'm like leaning on the wall in our bedroom, and I said to my husband, we're about to go out to the car, and I was like, I don't know if we have time to go to the hospital. Like, I think this baby might come here. Like, I don't know if we're going to make it. And then we like talked about it, and we're like, no, we're going to go to the hospital. We want to go to the hospital. So
I'm sure your husband was like, we're going to the hospital.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, great.
Like, ain't no way this baby is coming here. And so get into the car. It was a hellish car ride to the hospital.
A long ride.
I was like, the contractions were so intense. I swear we picked like the bumpiest road to drive down. I was like, I'm not a swearer, but that's when my fun language started coming out, all the traffic. And I was like, like, get me to the hospital. And yeah, and definitely on the car ride there, I was like, is my body pushing? Like, is this baby coming? Like, I do not want to have this baby in the car. Like, I was scared at that point. Like, ugh. So anyways, made it to the hospital. Baby did not come in the car. I remember saying to him too in the car, I was like, do I even need to go into triage? Like, I'm sure I'm in active labor. Like, they don't need to check me. Like, I'm convinced. And he's kind of sitting there like, I don't know. Like, why are you asking me? But sure enough, I go there. Of course, I have to go into triage and get checked. So I get up onto the bed, which was such an ordeal because it was like so uncomfortable because things were happening for sure. They checked me and I was 8 centimeters.
Amazing.
So which was like so exciting.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, I was probably like getting into transition as I'm driving to the hospital. No wonder it felt so intense. And it was funny because I walked into the to the triage room, the poor nurse. And she was like, okay, well, here's your gown that we're gonna get you to put on. And I was like, no thanks. I'm just gonna wear my own clothes. Like that was something I wanted to do. And then she's like, okay, well, we're just going to get you fitted for an IV. And she's like saying these things also nicely. And I was like, no, thanks. Like, I don't want an IV until it's necessary. And then my husband at this point, I think, said to another nurse, he's like, can you go get our doula? Like, she was somewhere in the hospital delivering another baby. And him being like, can you go get her to come help like deal with my mind? And so, yeah, was like kind of right away, like, this is, I don't necessarily want to do all the things that are typical. And I was really, I'll come to this later, but I was really grateful at that point I didn't get an IV. But yeah, so 8 centimeters, they're like, hey, let's get you up into labor and delivery. Got on a wheelchair. They wheeled me up. And I sat down. I was like, okay, when I have a contraction, like, we're going to stop, right? And she's like, yes, don't worry. I was like, I can't have anything happening. Like, I really have to focus. Oh, and in the triage room was where I first got offered like gas, like nitrogen oxide or whatever it is. And I was like, yes, sounds good. Like that was something I was always open to. And oh my gosh, that was amazing. I was like, this is amazing. Oh yeah, yes, definitely loved it. So yeah, get up into labor and delivery, my room, my doula's there, met my midwife because I was like in a rotational clinic where there was like 20 plus midwives. So I had met with 2 or 3 in my kind of prenatal care, but didn't necessarily know who was going to be on. Never met her, but she was part of the team. So it was great meeting her. And they got me right away up onto the bed on my knees, leaning over the back of the bed to labor. And then they got the monitors on me right away, of course. And I was hoping to have intermittent monitoring, but I knew like when you first come in, they need to like have you wear them for 20 minutes or whatever to just get a pulse on baby. And she did not like that position. Her heart rate started dropping. So right away, they got me onto my back and they were quite concerned and they wanted to get me to start pushing. So they checked me again. By then, I think I was 9.5 centimeters within kind of the span of like 30 minutes from when we arrived. And the midwife was like, hey, I'd like to try and help you get past that last 0.5 centimeter so you can start pushing. I was like, okay, sounds good. So we did that and I started pushing and it was very much like coached pushing. And I think in the moment I had my preference earlier was to kind of figure it out on my own, to lean into some like breathing pushing. But because baby's heart rate was dropping and it's again, just like that intensity of the environment, I was like, okay, sounds good. I didn't say that, but I just like did what I said.
But you agreed.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, so anyways, then there was conversations around, hey, husband, like, do you want to catch the baby? And he was like, no. And then they were also talking to me about taking my shirt off because baby was coming. And there was also conversations about, oh, I can see baby's hair, looks like they have the same color of hair as you. So in my mind, all of those things, especially as I reflected back on it, were like, baby's close, like this is happening. But then I can't remember exactly what happened, but I tried a few different pushing positions. And at some point, she kind of reverted and like went back up. And then, yeah, probably a position. I think it was like a position she didn't like because I was on my back and then I asked if we could try something different. And I moved to like the squatting position. I asked if they had a squat rack. I wanted to squat. That was kind of how I had envisioned doing most of my pushing. That's where I feel like I would feel strong, kind of anticipating that. But she did not like that. So then I was back on my back. Then once she had stabilized, so it was a lot of like, try something. She didn't love it. Stabilize the heart rate. Try something different. And yeah, in that process, she must have kind of, because I think she came down to about like 0 station, but then in the end, spoiler alert, like she was at like a minus 2, I think. So yeah, so we tried a bunch of different positions. Then I went to like the tug of war position, where it's like holding onto the sheet. Then I went to the toilet and I spent quite a lot of time laboring there. And that's where I asked for the TENS machine. So I started using my doula's TENS machine, which was really helpful through the contractions because and I'd be curious your take on this. As soon as I started pushing, they didn't let me have the gas. Is that common in your experience?
So my hospital didn't have gas when I was at the bedside, and they do now, like when I had my babies, but I didn't use it. So I don't have personal experience using it. But as far as I've always understood it, nitrous is, I'm going to use the word like so great. Some people don't like it, but in general, because you can use it like in combination with an epidural, and you can use it really throughout. Whereas some of the other meds, we can't like put it all together. You know, it's like you picked this, that's what you get. So that actually does surprise me, because I had thought that was what was so great about it. And then the caveat to
Right.
it always, which you know, is that you have to give it to yourself. So like you can't, your husband can't hold it on for you. Your nurse can't do it for you. Like you have to be in charge of it. I guess it could be limiting like location, geography wise, like if you're in the bathroom and it's not available
Sure.
to you because it's plugged into the wall or something. But that does surprise me. And I mean,
Yeah.
correct me if I'm
And-
wrong, someone out there, but I feel like that is odd.
Yeah, which as I'm saying it now, it's not something I've ever kind of asked about. And I should, because I'm
Mhm.
curious, because I really liked it.
Right.
It was really helpful to me, but for whatever reason, they didn't want me using it while I was pushing. And it might, I don't know, it might have been kind of early on because things were just so intense that they're like, you just
Mhm.
have to give all of your energy and
Yeah.
focus on pushing, and then maybe kind of forgot to pick it back up again. I don't know. But anyways, first thing, like pushing on the toilet, kind of had a stool under my feet and was sitting like forward. I spent quite a bit of time there. And again, TENS machine was super helpful, kind of working my way through those contractions. So about 2 hours had passed of pushing. I was feeling really drained and tired. Not so much physically, but just kind of mentally, emotionally.
Mhm.
And at this point, it was, I think, around 6:30 in the evening. So I say my labor started at like 1 a.m., like early labor. So this is 17, 18 hours into the whole process. And they wanted to check me again, and they wanted to bring an OB in to consult. And I was really hopeful at that point that maybe when the OB checked me, like we might be able to use like a vacuum,
Mhm.
because I just felt like something needed to shift. I was so like just ready for like I needed to do something different. And so I was open to that, to keep like to get what I was going for, right? Which is to have this baby, and just so eager and excited to like meet the baby. And yeah, so had the, I should say also, but at the same time, like I kind of knew without kind of knowing what station baby was at. They're not like telling you that in the process, or I didn't ask, but I knew enough of what was going on in my body to know she wasn't where she needed to be.
Mhm.
Like I wasn't feeling enough pressure down below to feel like, oh, my baby is about to exit my body.
Yeah.
So when the OB checked me very intensely, I'll say, and they said like, unfortunately, like your baby isn't far enough down for us to consider a vacuum or forceps. Like I wasn't super surprised. I was disappointed 100%, but not super surprised, because I knew in my body she wasn't where she needed to be. And so then they recommended that I have a cesarean. And that was like, yeah, super disappointing in the moment, because I was like, ugh, like how did, after all my like hard work and preparation, like how did we get here? And at the same time, as I said earlier, like I needed something had to give, and I needed something to be different. So they made their recommendation. They talk about the risk. They gave us the room. I chatted with our doula, who I really like respected. She had a ton of experience and had been really supportive of me and kind of all of my birth goals up until that point. And I think she knew how much I wanted this. And so I really valued her opinion. And so I was like, what do you think? And she said, honestly, like, I think we've tried everything safe that we can try. And I think this is a good plan. And so between that and talking to my husband, who was also like, I think we should go for it, I was like, okay, let's do it. No, the one thing I said before I agreed to it is I said to the team, I was like, if I had a chance to rest, got some medicine, because her heart rate was stable at this point. So I was like, if I had a chance to like recover a bit, could we try some more? And they said, you know, you could, but we don't think it's going to change anything, because it's not your pushing that's the problem at this point. Like it's not you're not weak and you're pushing, you're really strong. It's that she's not moving. And so like we don't think that's going to change anything, is effectively what they said.
So did you feel like they were saying it's positional, like for whatever reason, like this baby can't come down for some reason, but it's not you? I don't want to say it's not you, it's the baby, but yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what they were saying. It's not, you're not the problem. So you having more rest is not going to change anything. And of course, like, I can't change what happened, but I do think upon further reflection, maybe in that moment, my whole goal in that conversation was to not look back at regret. And I don't look back at regret. But having learned what I learned and having done a little bit of research after the fact, I think if I were to be in the exact same situation again, I might say, well, I want to give it a try anyways and see what happens.
Yeah.
That's, I think, if I were to do it again. But I didn't. And I said, okay, let's do it. Let's do the cesarean. And then I would say is like, the worst hour of the whole experience was that next hour, because it was like 6:30 p.m. So shift change was upon us at the hospital. It took 3 different nurses and 4 attempts for them to get an IV in my arm, which was the worst pain of the whole experience. It was horrid. I had bruises on my arms for like weeks after the fact, which is why I'm so glad I didn't get the IV when I first came in. And no shame on them. It was just, I don't know, these people were not skilled in this area. And then thankfully I was like, well, can I have the gas back now? And so they did give it back to me. So that was good. I felt like for whatever reasons, my contractions started like intensifying at this point, which I don't really understand, like physiologically, psychologically, why that would be. And at that point, because I had made the decision to get the cesarean, I was like, just give me the spinal. Like, like,
I don't want to feel this anymore. Yeah.
Because there's no point. Like, you tell me baby's not moving. Like, why am I still
hurting?
This?
Yeah.
And I was so exhausted. Like in my logical brain, looking back at it, I'm like, well, I should have just kept trying. But I was so exhausted, and I had made the decision. Like, I was like, this is what we're doing. And it just felt like it took so long to get me into the OR, experiencing these contractions, getting this IV into me. Anyways, finally we go in there, and I would say because I had such a positive, initial experience with a cesarean surgery, I had a lot of peace, like going into it. Despite all that, like I felt pretty calm, like I had done it before. For whatever reason, I've been just blessed with the most amazing, like, anesthesiologists who are just like the kindest people in the world. They're so great. And so, went into the room. Our doula was able to come with us, which was awesome. She was just super encouraging throughout that process. Got to play like the music that I wanted playing, and the team was just great. But it was during shift change, and it was quite funny because everyone kept coming up and introducing themselves to me, which was so professional and kind. But I was kind of like, can we get the show on the road? Like, cool, nice to meet you. I trust you.
We can talk later. Yeah.
I want to meet my baby. Like, let's do this. So it was just kind of funny in hindsight. They did the surgery. It went super well. She came out crying, pink, healthy, which of course was so encouraging given the fact that she was almost at 42 weeks. And of course there's all these like concerns, but she was great. Like, she was great. She was 8 pounds, 4 ounces, 8 pounds, 4 or 6, one of the two. And so, not crazy huge, which of course is what people are worried about. And they held her up. I got to see her. My husband announced the gender again. They got her on my chest right away. She came out like wanting to eat immediately. My doula like helped her like latch right while I was like laying there on the surgery bed, which was really special and really cool. Yeah. And it was, it was beautiful. And like sitting there, I was like, felt like equally kind of disappointed that this is where things had landed, but also so like incredibly proud of myself and like the decisions I had made and what like the hard work that it took to get there, and just the resolve that I had to not kind of cave to the pressure and to the opinions of people around me, like, and well-intentioned, like people I love being like, well, aren't you worried that the baby's too big? Aren't you worried? Like, and I was like, no, I wasn't. And it was such an experience, like such a journey of like trusting myself and trusting my body. And I would never say that I was a person kind of leading up to this experience that was really like in tune with my body. Like I had friends who were like, knew exactly what was happening. And when they ate this, they feel this. And I'm not like that. I'm kind of just like, well, if it's not broken, like it's working, like it's kind of my mindset. But it was such a journey of trusting myself, trusting my body, again, coming back to that. that mantra of like, I have a good body, my body is good. And despite, landing with another surgery, which is not what I wanted, I still had accomplished like 3 out of my 4 goals, which was to achieve spontaneous labor, to avoid an epidural, and to avoid medicine. Like the whole journey I had been until the surgery, of course, it was unmedicated. And I was so proud of that experience, not because it got me a medal or anything, but because it was what I set out to do and what I really wanted. And yeah, and then went into kind of that post-op room, had an hour to be with her and just to have her nurse. And right away with my first, we had a really rough go at breastfeeding for the first 2 weeks, I would say. I mean, kind of the whole thing got started. It was just tough, like for a variety, nothing overt, like not tongue ties or anything, but it just took us a while to find our rhythm, and it was really painful. This time around, it was such a gift because she knew what she was doing and I had a better handle on things, and it was just off to such a more positive start, which made that experience just so much better. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's probably where I would like conclude I mean, the last thing I would say is like through those last couple or those first few weeks postpartum, I would say like the first 3 weeks or so, it was tough because every time, not because she was tough, like she's a pretty easygoing baby, but because every time I would like experience incision pain while I'm trying to nurse, or like be frustrated that I can't pick up my oldest and like put her to bed because I have to be so careful. It just felt like this, and I think I had expressed this to you, like it just felt like this constant reminder of what I was trying so hard to avoid. And one of like the key motivators of why I wanted a VBAC. And so I had to like wrestle through that. And then there was this other moment, which I had been talking to you about, messaging you about, where I was like kind of going through my OB report and just trying to like understand and like reconcile what happened, right? And which I think is so important and meaningful. And she was, in the end, like they said, she was asynclitic. So effectively, like her head was crooked coming down my pelvis. She was kind of like trying to come out, like, I don't know how to describe this back part of her head rather than the front part. And so then I was like Googling like asynclitic presentation and came across this Spinning Babies page that had like all of these things you could try. And I just, in that moment, like I started crying, and I was like, oh man, like where was this page when, and I think you just go, for me anyways, I go into this like, why didn't someone tell me this? Or what? Like I got kind of mad. Like I was like, why didn't I try these things? And that's when your words were so encouraging, because you're like, you can't blame yourself for what you didn't know. Like you didn't have that in hand at the time. Like you can't rewrite the past. And yeah, if I were in that exact position again, or if I had a friend whose baby was, asynclitic, I'd be like, check out this page, like, try these things. And there's probably a good chance that we did try a handful of them, like I said, we tried probably like 4 or 5 different positions. She didn't like a lot of them, so she was, a little picky in the womb, but so it was hard because I am, and that's my personality. I am always the person who's going to be like, what went wrong? What could be better? Like it's never going to be 100%. There's always things you can improve. That's just how my brain works. And I have to really like wrestle with that and trust that like it was a good experience, and I learned a lot, and I learned things that I will take with me forward into my next birth, like which I'm hoping to have. And so yeah. And now, like I say, I think I've mostly come to terms with it. And yet I'm still here talking to you, and have a few tears streaming down my face, because it's, just because I've come to terms with it doesn't mean I'm still not a little bit sad that it didn't turn out exactly how I hoped it would. So,
yeah. But Priscilla, that's like, in my opinion, the whole point of sharing these stories, is because I think it's such a good reminder to all of us of how we can kind of like hold multiple things at once, right? Like you said, when you described the second cesarean, it was beautiful and your face was lit up, and like you clearly have so many really good memories of that cesarean, even though you did not want to be in that OR. And so obviously postpartum is when you really start to process like, whoa, I also feel really sad too. But I think it is just such a good reminder that I think even in, I'm going to say like quote unquote perfect births, like there's often multiple things still being held. Like it's pretty rare, I think, that people just get everything they wanted. And so it can be more extreme sometimes of how you have to kind of hold two things at once. But I think it's cool. Like, I get to see you right now while we talk. And so I can see you crying while you're smiling or whatever. And it's just such a good example of how this goes sometimes, and that it's so real, and it can be hard to explain because you're sitting there going, I'm sad and I'm happy, and it doesn't make sense, but that's what it was to have birth like this, you know? So I'm grateful when people like you share stories that don't always go the way that were intended or wanted, because I think it's a really good thing for us to learn from and see, so that when we inevitably hit those moments too, whether it be in our birth or life or whatever, we can say, oh yeah, I'm allowed to feel both, right? Because you probably feel this duality at some point when you're a mom. And so sometimes it happens right here when we're first getting to meet our babies, and sometimes it shows up later, but it's going to show up, you know?
Yeah,
and then
100%.
And then the other thing I would say is I so clearly remember getting messages from you after your birth. And I just wanted to kind of reiterate what you said. And you said I had spoken to you about, like, you can't judge the person you were in those moments against what you learn now. And I just wanted to reaffirm that for everybody listening to, is that's something I go back to a lot when I get to talk to my students and I hear how it goes. And obviously not everyone has perfect birth. And I don't preach that or teach that, because that's foolish and that's dishonest to say it will always be perfect if you take this class or whatever. But I do think we all have this tendency, we leave our births like you, or maybe some of us do this. We start to learn and think about how we could fix what went wrong. And then we try to apply that knowledge and that wisdom that you have now, like, to the person you were 4 months ago. And just, we can't do that. Like, in that moment, you obviously, clearly did your absolute best with the information that you had at that moment in time. And you know more now, and you can take that wisdom and carry it forward. But the Priscilla you are today is not the same Priscilla you were 8 weeks ago. And so, yeah, it's easy for me to say that. You still have to like wrestle with that. But I do like putting that out in the postpartum world of like, I'm proud of you for all you've learned now, but you don't get to think like that woman and this woman are the same. Like, you've done more, your wisdom has grown. And obviously, like you said, Lord willing, if you get to have more babies, you get to bring that forward, but you can't like shift it backwards as much as we wish we could. So I'm just so proud of you. I read your messages and I thought, obviously there's grief here, right? And we want to speak to that and acknowledge that. But man, and being at the bedside too, those moms who come in, labor, push, do the entire labor process, and then also have a cesarean. So basically you're having two births in one birth. Like, the level of respect and pride and just kind of awe I had for those patients and for those students or moms now, it's high. Like, it's really big, because you truly did all the things. And then that means you're swollen from pushing and you're sore from laboring, but then you also have cesarean recovery. Like, physically speaking, your body has just done so much. And you just, all of you just weather it and you take care of your baby and you move forward. And it's just kind of phenomenal to see, even though it's obviously hard to live, as I'm sure you can attest to. So I am really, really proud of you as student or as teacher and friend and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. It means a lot. And I don't know, I think, well, we don't have to go down this path necessarily, but call me crazy or call me determined or whatever you want to call me. Like, the wild thing about it is, like, I look back at it and I'm like, I would do it again. Like, there's the grief is not so strong, or the disappointment is not so strong, or the intensity of it all is not so like overwhelming that I would be like, oh, I would never do that again, or I would just go straight to a surgery, you know, because for many reasons. And it was so amazing. And that was one of the things I was so looking forward to, like, getting to experience what my body was like designed to do was such a huge motivator for me. And it was such a gift and something I'm so grateful for, because I know it is not something that everyone has the ability to do. And so to be able to experience labor and in all of its uniqueness, right? Because it's all so different for everyone, so kind of relative in many ways. And still land where I landed, I was still like, you know, it wasn't so bad that I wouldn't try it again, you know? Yeah. So but yeah, it was so awesome. Thank you again for giving me the chance to share my story. And I just hope, for other women who are out there, maybe in that kind of similar state of being quite a bit overdue past their due date, like that they can find encouragement, and also just find encouragement from these stories, right? Like I said, like that's so much of what I leaned into during my pregnancy, and still, I think still now, I love hearing people's stories. There's just something about it that's so beautiful and awe-inspiring.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's a perfect actually segue into this last little question. If people wanted to ask you a question about your story, is there somewhere they can email you, or an Instagram or a social profile that you're willing to share?
Yeah, I love that. For sure. They could probably, the best way would just be on Instagram. That's where I'm a millennial. So that's kind of the only platform I'm active on, which is just my first and last name, Priscilla Nerling. You can shoot me a message there.
We will share that in the show notes. And then you mentioned like a couple of resources. I know you were a student in my class. Anything specific you want to call out, or a book you loved as well? I think you said the hypnobirthing app. Anything else?
Yeah, I like the hypnobirthing app. And then I think there was a book I read called Calm Birth that I quite liked. And then there's another podcast I'll shout out to, which is the hypnobirthing podcast, which is like a lot of stories, just a lot of like birth stories, which was really encouraging for me as well.
Okay, perfect.
And then I'll shout out this podcast too, of course. I mean, people are listening. Hopefully they're already subscribed. So. But yeah, huge fan. And your page was just like huge, like your Instagram and your website and everything, like your courses. It's all so valuable. And I love the voice that you are in this space.
Thanks, friend. Okay, last question. What's one thing in your life, it could be big, small, anything, that's just sparking joy, just bringing you a ton of happiness right now? Yeah,
I mean, this is going to be like cliche or not surprising, but I would say like both my daughters in the different stages that they're at. You know, I've got this almost 2-year-old, she turns 2 next week, and then this 8-week-old who's like exiting the newborn phase. And the contrast and the differences between their stages just like amplifies and highlights what's beautiful about both. My 2-year-old is just chatting nonstop, and she's hilarious, and she's got such a sense of humor, and everything she says is adorable. And then my 8-week-old is like in that really like fun, smiley, like kind of has a bit of conversation back and forth with you. And like her personality is starting to like, you know, she's no longer just kind of that potato newborn vibe. She's becoming like more and more of like who she is as a person. And the contrast between the two is so beautiful. And I have to like lean into those things in the hard moments when they're both crying and I don't know what to do, you know, because that's also so real. Yep.
Well, sounds like you're doing great. I know that means a lot of things with 2 under 2, because that's a whole thing. I lived that one too, and it sounds really sweet in the midst of what I know is chaos and hard too. Yeah. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your story. I am so proud of you. I'll just say it one last time. Thanks, Priscilla.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to the Lo and Behold podcast. I hope there was something for you in today's episode that made you think, made you laugh, or made you feel seen. For show notes and links to the resources, freebies, or discount codes mentioned in this episode, please head over to loandbeholdpodcast.com. If you aren't following along yet, make sure to tap subscribe or follow in your podcast app so we can keep hanging out together. And if you haven't heard it yet today, you're doing a really good job. A little reminder for you before you go. Opinions shared by guests of this show are their own and do not always reflect those of myself and the Labor Mama platform. Additionally, the information you hear on this podcast or that you receive via any linked resources should not be considered medical advice. Please see our full disclaimer at the link in your show notes.